Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Marie, and today I'm doing another video game buyer's guide video for a game console you've probably never heard of. Very likely never seen, touched, or played in your entire life. And you're wondering, why is it on this list? Why am I doing a video on a game console nobody remembers? Well, because I fucking remember it. I did not have one as a kid. We were dirt ass poor. I got my Sega Genesis in 1994, the last year it was relevant, and it was on sale, dirt cheap. I got my Nintendo 64, or excuse me, my Super Nintendo, the day the N64 came out. That's how poor we were. There was no chance in hell I was going to get a 3DO. What is a 3DO? Well, that's actually more complicated than it sounds, to be honest with you. It is technically not a video game console. Technically. It is a multimedia entertainment machine. Kind of like a Blu-ray player or a DVD player or, hell, a VCR. In that it was designed to play multimedia software. Kind of like the CDI. Interactive entertainment educational software is what it was designed to do. But it was also designed with an upgrade to the MPEG card to play movies, specifically video CDs or VCDs. That's where the multimedia aspect comes in. But because it was designed by the founder of Electronic Arts, actually, Trip Hawkins, who left EA to form the 3DO company to work on the 3DO project, it does play video games. It does come with a controller that is reminiscent of controllers at the time. It has the standard, basically Genesis, Atari 2600 style controller plug. So any controller from any of those consoles will work on it technically. Your Genesis 6-button controller will work on it, although you're not going to get access to all 6 buttons. Maybe you will. It depends. The 3DO is a pretty good system, except it has some flaws. And it's got some things we have to talk about. The first thing we have to talk about is the 3DO company never made any 3DOs. There are no 3DOs in existence ever made by 3DO. That was not how it worked. How it worked was the 3DO company licensed the technology to other technology companies who would manufacture their own version of it. It had to have the standard features, controller, compatibility with the software, optional upgrade for the MPEG to play video CD, but some of them had the MPEG built in, I believe. But the design of the console, or system, we'll say, and the controller and everything else, was up to the individual manufacturer. Now, I don't know what went on outside the US, because information on the 3DO is actually kind of hard to come by, especially reliable information on it is hard to come by. To the best of my knowledge, I can verify that 3 companies manufactured different models of the 3DO. They were Gold Star, who today is known as LG, Panasonic, who today is still Panasonic, and I believe the other one, I can't remember the other one actually. There was Gold Star, there was Panasonic, and then there was a third one, but I'm going to be honest, I forgot the third one. So, oops. It's not important, because if you did own a 3DO, you most likely owned a Panasonic one anyways, because most people associate the 3DO with Panasonic. They refer to it as the Panasonic 3DO. Panasonic actually released at least 2 models that I know of. Maybe more. Now, the 3DO hardware, again, is kind of complicated. It's basically a 32-bit 32-bit processor with limited CG 3D capabilities. Limited. Comparable to the 32X or the Atari Jaguar. So not up to snuff with the PS1 or the Saturn. Not quite. Just beneath them. But 2D graphics, it is on par, at least with easily the Sega CD, the Saturn, and the PlayStation, as well as the 32X. And definitely more powerful than the Super Nintendo. Now, it is technically a, quote, 32-bit system, but it's pretty much on level with the allegedly 64-bit Atari Jaguar, which we will have the misfortune of talking about in a future video, unfortunately. We'll get there. However, with the added capability, if you add the MPEG card to the MPEG video card, you can add full motion video CD capabilities, which allows you to play additional games not compatible on the base hardware. Or at least, it's like adding a 32X to the Sega CD. It gives you better picture quality out of those games. I've never owned a 3DO. In my entire life, I'm 41 years old. In my entire life, I have only ever seen one in the wild at a used video game store. It was like $85 at the time. This was like 2001 or 3. But somewhere between 2001 and 3. Somewhere in that ballpark. I should have fucking bought it at the time because I've never seen another one. And they go for fucking outrageous prices on eBay. There's a reason for that. One, they were hella expensive back in the day when they were new. They were like $600, $700 depending on which model you got, which was a lot of money in 1993 when they hit the market. Also, because they were manufactured by different companies and there is no standard, there was no 3DO never kept a warehouse of parts for, replacement parts or warranty repairs. It fell on the manufacturers of the individual machines. I think Sanyo was the third model, actually. The third company that made them, if I remember correctly. It just popped in my head. Sorry for that. But anyways, again, the companies that made them, Panasonic, Sanyo, and what would be LG today, don't give a fuck about this machine. So they don't have... You can't order... replacement parts for it. So if you buy a broken 3DO, you own a broken 3DO. You're not likely to get it fixed. It's kind of like the CED from RCA. We're at that point in history now where they're getting next to impossible to repair, and they're only going to get harder to repair as time goes on. And the chances of you getting a functioning one become increasingly difficult as time goes on because they're Laserdisc products, not Laserdisc like, actual 12-inch Laserdisc, but I mean it's a disc that's read by a laser. And the lasers, they wear out after a while, they malfunction, etc. And you have to replace it with specific parts to that machine, which again are going to be hella hard to come by. So that's one of the reasons why they're expensive. The other reason why they're expensive is because they didn't sell worth a shit back in the day. Nobody fucking bought these goddamn things. They were a massive financial loss for the companies who invested in them, including the 3DO company, who would eventually, no surprise, go out of business. However, that just means that there's not a lot of them out there, which means there's even fewer of them that are in working condition, which means if you get one that works, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay out the wazoo for it. Twice over. Otherwise, you're just buying a piece of plastic. with some electronic components in it. Which is, at that point, it's like, why even fucking bother? Now, unfortunately, there are no retro clones that I know of that are compatible with 3DO software, partially because there's no fucking demand for it, and partially because there's really no emulators to speak of, so there's nothing to base a retro clone on. There's one emulator that does exist that I know of, and it's called 4DO. However, the guy who created it stopped updating it after a while and abandoned the project, I believe. It was the last thing I read. Never finished it, and it was never very well functional to begin with. It's not a very complete emulator. And as far as I know, nobody else has taken up the mantle. I'm a little out of the loop, so I don't know if MAME has a 3DO module or not. I would guess probably not, because there aren't any other systems that use this the microchips in this machine, the core, motherboard, processor, etc. that's in this machine, like arcades or computers or anything else. So there's not a lot of documentation out there, and there's not a lot of other systems people are dying to emulate that would further emulation of this product. And because most of the software that was available for it was either produced by the 3DO company themselves, or their third-party partner, Electronic Arts, or they were, basically ports of Sega CD games, more or less. Most of the software that was released on the 3DO is locked to the 3DO. Like, hardly any of it has been ported elsewhere. Almost none of it released on modern platforms. And I say almost none of it. The 3DO did have a version of Wolfenstein 3D that is obviously Wolfenstein's available. And it did have a version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which has been made available on modern systems. And it had a version of the Need for Speed, which I believe that version was also released on PlayStation. Maybe Sega Saturn. But again, EA isn't like rushing to re-release old versions of Need for Speed. They want you to buy the new one that they put all their money into. They don't want you buying an old game. So there's really not any modern, viable way to experience 3DO software. Which is going to mean I have to recommend this machine as something you're probably never going to want to own for a lot of reasons. One, even if you go through the hurdles and you somehow pay out the ass and you get one that works and you track down the software, which good luck with that, and the discs aren't scratched or scuffed or disc rot or whatever, and they still actually function, you're going to pop the game in and you're going to be asking yourself, why the fuck am I playing this rubbish? When you're going to overpay for what is essentially a Sega CD game, or overpay for a piece of shit like The Way of the Warrior or Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Go watch the AVGN video on why that game is not worth your fucking time. Beyond that, there is no killer app on the platform. There's nothing worth investing in as a collector or as a gamer, other than if you're like a hardcore collector who has the money and has to own everything. You might want to get a 3DO just to say you have one for the bragging rights, but you're not likely gonna play it. So retro gamers have no need for or interest or use for a 3DO, and probably would be better off spending your funds on those expensive, hard-to-find, rare NES games than you would trying to track down the rubbish on the 3DO, unfortunately. That's not to say there aren't good games on the system. There are. It's just the good games, by and large, the most of the ones that you're gonna want to play, you're better off just getting on Sega CD or PlayStation or something else that was available at the time anyways. There's not really any compelling reason to have the 3DO version other than, maybe morbid curiosity, or if you were one of those unfortunate souls, God bless you, I guess, who had one as a kid, and I'm sorry, your childhood probably was great in other ways, but your video game system sucked. Obviously, your Nintendo gamers would have no interest in the 3DO. Your Sega gamers would be better off with a Sega CD. And everybody else is just going to buy a PlayStation and forget about it. There's really nobody out there. This machine doesn't exist for it. There's no market for it. There is nobody out there clamoring for a 3DO besides me and other weirdos like me. I would love to have one. I would die to have one. It would be like I'd be in heaven if I had a working 3DO in any fucking game. Even plumbers don't wear it. I don't give a fuck. Just give me a 3DO and one game. I'd be hella happy. But that's because I grew up reading about it in the magazines and wanting it, coveting it, desiring it. The 3DO, to me, as far as video games go, is my white whale. It's the coveted, what do they call it? The treasure, that I'll never get, the holy grail, as they say. It's the one video game item I'll never own, unfortunately. Hey, if you're out there and you're rich and you like my content and you want to send me a 3DO, yay, I'd love you forever. But I don't expect anybody to do that, obviously, and I'll never have the money for one. I can't even scrape together the money to buy a new laptop. And the day this one dies, I'll be doing all my videos on this cell phone, which is going to suck. So, hopefully, I can scrape together the money to get that laptop soon. But I'm not holding my breath on it. But anyways, 3DO, basically, it's a footnote in gaming history, and that's all it is. It's best that you just forget about it. You can't even really watch Let's Plays of it on YouTube, because there's, no interest in it. Nobody's got a working 3DO with all the necessary video capture equipment to stream it, and emulation is not really a viable option. Now, this could change. Maybe somebody has improved upon the emulation out there, and there is a functional 3DO emulator. If there is, I'd love to know about it. Leave it in the comments if you don't want to get dinged by the YouTube algorithm. Or reach out to me elsewhere. Other than that, I have nothing else to say about the 3DO. I would die to have one, but realistically, it's not likely ever going to happen. I have a better chance of going to dinner with Princess Diana and Michael Jackson than I do ever owning a 3DO.